to Clementine's Nightmare. I would like to introduce you to my Pixelated Inc. founding team. We have Josh Ellithorpe, which many of you met. We have Alex Daltis, who's in charge of all the storyboard. We have Jonathan Ip, who's our legal counsel. And we have Alan Hunter from the Petrol side and also on our side, Sean. And we also have our other founder that you've never met before, Ben Granados.
Pleasure, everybody.
Hey, everybody. Hello.
Hey.
Okay, so I think everybody's met most of us already. Maybe Ben, can you give a brief introduction to our community, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So super excited to finally meet you all. As you guys know, this has been a project that has been in existence for quite some time. So it's very exciting to finally see 4 or 5 years worth of work starting to come to fruition. So we're super excited to be here and to have this conversation today. But just a little bit about myself. I'm Alan Hunter's partner. Him and I have been in business together for 25 years. We've had the fortunate pleasure of probably working on over at least 2,500 games over the course of a long career in gaming. And it's very exciting to be able to be a part of something where we're able to leverage sort of that expertise and that experience from working inside of the gaming space into this particular space. So as the guys I think have spoken to at length, this is something that we have a genuine love and passion in. Super excited about it, and again, happy to be here. And as part of Alan's team, and as part of launching, Alan's partner, and as part of launching, so many different game titles, one of the things that we're also incredibly excited about is being able to be in a position where we take that sort of leadership position and that industry knowledge and able to apply it to sort of what we're doing here on this particular project. So it's a pleasure to meet everybody. Again, name is Ben. If Alan is the creative side of the business, I'm sort of the strategy side of the business. Huge gamer. Play everything on Switch to PC to Xbox to PlayStation, free to play, games as a service games, console games, mobile games. And again, just happy to be here and really excited to walk you guys through a presentation today. So nice to meet y'all.
Thanks, Ben. Just so everybody knows, I mean, I've known everybody for a very long time separately. So these are all friends, and I must say that they're also my mentors. So for me, it's a pleasure to be working with Alan and Ben and Josh as well. So and everybody else on the team. So thank you.
Awesome. So we ready to move into the deck, guys?
Yes.
All right. So we are going to share screen, and this is a really cool opportunity for us, everyone. So as Ben said, our partnership with Pixelated Inc. and the brain power that Josh brings to our team and the experience that Norman brings to our team is incredibly important for us, and it's something. I don't know, that number keeps changing. 3, 4, 5 years. It's been a long time. We've been thinking about this and doing this. But we're in a fortunate position. We've spent our careers in the gaming space, and the gaming space has changed our lives. It's changed our families' lives. It's what we've lived for. It's what we've grown our children up on. It's everything to us. And there's not a day that goes by when we're not blessed to be in it and happy that, starting off as two guys that were, making movie posters 25 years ago, that we actually now are living our dreams and doing the things we want to do. So over that time, we've been fortunate enough to represent all these billion-dollar brands. And we have different involvements. We do the marketing campaign for them, which means we do all of the key art and the boxes and all of the trailers, and then the strategic go-to-market plans, like, how do they find the right audience? And sometimes along the way, we even get consulted in terms of like, hey, should our characters look different? Or how should we be involved with our community in a different way. And a lot of the times, 99% of the times, we're not allowed to show that, or we're not allowed to share that, because we're a white label business. So Petrol's job is to make our partners successful. So the brands that we've worked with, if you've been to our website and you've seen our work, our job is to work with them. We work with all these incredibly talented developers all over the world, in the RPG space, in the shooter space, in the mobile gaming space, in the PC space. And what's so great for us is every time we get a new job, we're thrilled, we're excited, because we're gamers and we love it. When it came to Clementine, this was an opportunity to do things completely differently and do it out of passion. And we all had this love for whimsical macabre. And different people on the team have experienced it in different ways, whether it's through light horror or for more of the Little Shop of Horrors, if you're old enough to remember that, or through the Tim Burton era of the 90s and 2000s and all those great movies that inspired us. And so we wanted to make a game that was inspired on characters that hadn't been seen before, and take all the learnings that we have from years of doing this and bring it to a place where we felt the characters, the development, the design, and the illustration was going to be something that was very unique and very special. And what's so cool about what we're going to take you through tonight is we can actually share that development. We're not allowed to do that in all the other games we work for because it's proprietary. Because this is something that we're developing from scratch, we can actually share this stuff with you. So if you go to the next slide, please, and forgive me, I'm tracking the monitor and I know I'm looking away from the camera. But we're going to take you through a journey of how Clementine came to life. And this is a look inside. If you got to come and visit Petrol, we'd have this stuff up on a whiteboard and we'd have our sketches laid up on the table and you'd see them. But this deck takes you through that. So you start to see the original inspiration and the spirit behind what we're creating here. So next slide, please. Early tissues. So this is when the fire is flowing and there's a lot of debate and we've all got ideas. And this caused a lot of passionate debates at Petrol in terms of, shouldn't it look more traditional and shouldn't it feel like a game that, maybe a CCG player would be more comfortable with? And that was what was so fun for us, is we wanted to push that. We wanted to get away from that. So what you're looking at here is all that early development, all these early tissues. You can see that we started with something that was maybe a little scarier, and maybe Clementine was a little bit more gangly. I think at that time we were thinking of her as like a 12-year-old and not necessarily a 15-year-old, right? So that development started going into, back then what were monsters, which eventually have become beasts, which we'll get into in a second. So if you go to the next slide, please, you'll start to see the tangible development of how Clementine herself evolved. So having grown up and having worked on some of these movies and having been a fan of these type of genres, we wanted to create something that was really powerful, but was relatable to kids that were normal kids and relatable to us as, art and gaming nerds growing up. This had to be something that we felt we could really invest in and create that felt like the people and the friends and the worlds we live in, and not necessarily just duplicating what we've seen in other games. So when you look at this slide right here, you can start to see she started off a little bit weaker, and maybe she was a little bit more gangly and unsure of herself, and we were trying to work through this idea of, what is the idea of the origins of her, and where do these nightmares come from? But that all comes through the character design, and that character design is really about empowerment. So as we move to the right side of the slide, you start to see that she's now becoming stronger. And that's us as a team saying, wait a minute, this is a character that's going to stand up and she's going to face these nightmares. So as we get deeper into the story, we'll talk more about that. But you can see the evolution of that character as it goes to the right. The camo pants, right? The sort of ragtag things that you find in her garage or in her room that she's making up her pseudo-military outfit with. And eventually what's going to become our very unique weapons, which a lot of you have responded really well to online. And then next slide, please. Early, I want to say this is 2019. these were early cards. And we were starting to think about, and this was a different game mechanic that Sean's going to talk about in a minute. But you can see how our idea was starting to develop, and forgive us if we're art geeking on this a little bit, but it's so cool that we actually get to share this process. You know, that's an older logo. The typeface was different. And as this is going on, we're looking at the gaming community and we're seeing how people are playing. And, you know, the pandemic happens. People are starting to maybe reinvest back into these type of games that had left the space. Maybe they're in their 30s and 40s and 50s and they're starting to think, man, I used to love playing XYZ game. Is Clementine a way back in? Is it something that I could play with my son or daughter or family and still be in that macabre that I love and storytelling that I love, but something new and something different, not just revisiting something that I've done before? Go to the next slide, please. So now we're getting into the big change and the development. As this went on and as the years were going by and we were talking about this and revisiting the project, we'd started with this idea of all of these things being parchment drawings and having a very handcrafted feeling to them. But as we became closer with the character and closer with the fiction, she started to feel real to us. The beasts, the nightmares, the rebels, they all started to feel real to us. So we made the decision to let's just build her in 3D and see what she looks like when she becomes tangible, when she becomes a real living, breathing object, but not losing the sensibility of what that 15-year-old kid looked like in the very, very first sketch. Next slide, please. So this is a huge shift. So then you go back and you look, well, how did all these things begin? You can see a very early Mord there. And that's done by somebody on our team whose name is Alan Robbins, brilliant artist. Everything that you're seeing in this deck has been touched by probably 30, 40 people at Petrol. And what's unique about our business is, and what I'm very proud of, and I know Ben is very proud of too, you have people like Sean and people like Alex that have joined us in their 20s, and they'll stay with us in their 30s and into their 40s because they love games and they're growing within the space. But we have people in Sweden working on this, people in India. We're a global business and we have teams all over the world. So we're getting that united sensibility of, you know, what is that unifying force? And we want Clementine, when you look at these designs, we want a Clementine to be the kind of thing like when you go to get a cup of coffee in the morning and there's an old muscle car in the parking lot. That car becomes a unifier. Somebody who's really wealthy, somebody who's maybe just on their way up, somebody who's, you know, just there picking up a coffee and is maybe on the lower economic scale, the higher economic scale. That car, that muscle car becomes a unifier. And that was always kind of a gut check, is like the greatest games are based on simple stories and they become really great unifiers for people. People come in and they start to relate to the characters, they relate to the stories. And so that's what we were doing here. So what you're seeing on this page is the experimentation of 2D, 3D. Were these characters too thin? Were they gonna not really work when they went down on the size of somebody's phone? So that evolution is, you know, the stuff that you're seeing today on our website and as we reveal our characters. Next slide, please. So our approach to the logo, again, not stuff that most people get to see. You know, when we're fortunate enough to launch a game, you know, Cookie Run Kingdom or Call of Duty or some of the games that we work on, sometimes we'll go through 50, 100, maybe even 200, 300 versions of a logo. They're billion-dollar brands and there's so many partners and everybody has a voice. And they're important voices, right? Because they're investing in the title and they're investing in the brand. But we have a lot of people to be able to try to please and then obviously hit the strategy. When we're doing this for ourselves, this is more about what feels right. And, you know, it was interesting. I think we became our own worst critics and maybe our own worst clients. But I think we got to somewhere that was really, really good. And we always wanted to have that sort of hand-drawn. Some of the stuff that you're seeing that's coming from Clementine's sketchbook comes directly from this idea of it's handcrafted. It comes from her. Next slide, please. And this is where we ended up. So, Sean, you want to talk a little bit about these shapes?
Yeah, so when we crafted this logo, we wanted something that really felt youthful, something that was fun, didn't feel too horror, but still spoke back to that horror roots that it came from. Something that was very tall, something we felt would be really legible in a small space. It was one of our considerations. But we really wanted to embrace that Tim Burton, that Beetlejuice vibe that we initially started with, and that's where we started getting with the Clementine's Nightmare that you see today. You see the roots coming off of the nightmares, going into the Clementine themselves, really embracing the integrating of the type itself. And this is where we got to that really fun typeface you see today.
Yeah. I hope this is not boring for you guys, but to us, this is our world. So it's so exciting to share this with you, that there's meaning to these things. So we're not just putting these things out because we think they look cool. We want there to be a backstory to every single element that we're putting in front of you. So next slide, please. So I'm going to hand it to Sean here, but I do want to say and give the disclaimer, this is 2.5, 3 years ago.
Yes.
And this was what we originally thought the game was going to be. So
that was
very
the
cool.
old board.
That's right. That's the old board. So Sean's going to talk about that, and then we're going to talk about later how we've evolved way beyond this.
So way back when we were starting this project, it started out as a card game. It was very 2D. It was hero versus hero. And we initially envisioned this very interactive space where the board came to life, interacted with your cards. That's where you're seeing some of these creatures really integrated into the space. We had energy crystals. We had end turns that would interact whenever you clicked them. We really wanted this to be a fun, integrated game, even in the 2D card space. So this was a very early version of the game itself, where we initially started with, all right, a hero battler. How do we move past the card element? We really wanted to start becoming more of a AAA game. When we first saw this, we were like, this is cool, but is it fun enough to come back and play over and over and over? And that's where we went back to the drawing board to really craft that game where we are at today, something that is far more tangible, something that feels like more I can play in real time on my phone. There is no end turn button. You're always in the action in our current game. I can't really share too many details about where we're at right now, but soon a lot of those details will be coming out, but just wanted to share this early version. I mean, honestly, this is probably one of about 50 to 100 versions of the cardboard that we did.
Yeah.
The current game doesn't recognize, it doesn't look anything like, to be perfectly honest.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's really important that we share it, because when we do start to share the gameplay, it's so cool. Look, everybody that's listening to us tonight has been interested in Loyal and is helping us get to this space. And because, we are not handcuffed by, multiple partners, NDAs, which we respect 1,000% in our business, we are able to show development. And, you see some of the 3D elements on the side of the board there, and that's when that debate started to happen, probably 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And we're like, man, we really should start thinking about what this looks like in a 3D space.
Yeah.
So let's go to the next slide, please. Oh, please, go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, as someone who has, sort of bear witness to watching how these things, come to fruition, trying to figure out how to visually articulate thought is a process in and of itself. And so, one of the things that I think is very important, and I want to make sure that I'm emphasizing this, is the fact that, you go through a creative process to get to good things, eventually throw out good things to get to great things. And so when it comes particularly to the game space and to the NFT space, this isn't just us arriving and throwing something out there to sort of catch, a certain trend. This is about years and years and years of a process to arrive at something that, embraces the story, embraces the creativity, brings forth something that has a lot of love and true, and genuine passion behind it, versus like, oh, wow, there's this trend and it's called NFTs and cool, let's slap something together and get it out there. This has been an iterative process of like going through years and years and years of like getting to things that are probably acceptable and probably good enough. But with this team that's sitting here in front of you, like good enough isn't good enough. Like it has to be in a spot where it is the best. And so, that is the standard by which, we hold ourselves to. And again, you guys as the community will determine whether or not we're actually delivering something that's the best. But the true, sort of thing to keep in mind behind this is that is the ambition, to get to something that we actually really, really can sort of believe in and feel is, indicative and representative of the actual product that we're trying to deliver to you guys. Because as Alan and the team have been saying, like, community to us is everything. It is the beginning and the end. And so without you guys feeling, the passion that goes into this, it doesn't matter. So that's why it's such an important thing, to Alan's point, to sort of lift up the kimono and see kind of the inside, to understand that this has been years in the making to get to a place where, we're bringing this to life in a meaningful way. And we'll continue to work on it and continue to make mistakes until, we learn from those mistakes and we continue to get better. So that's sort of, I hope, the genuineness that you'll see with the team here too, is not afraid to make mistakes, not afraid to try new things, and ultimately get to a place where, hopefully we're throwing out a bunch of good stuff to hopefully get to a bunch of great stuff.
Yeah. Oh, well said. Josh, did you want to add anything there before we move to the next slide?
I mean, the only thing is I saw some people asking about the current game state, and we're doing them all in full 3D. There's not even cards that are on the play area. There's some cards in your hand that you'll be able to institute some effects, but things have changed dramatically, and I think much for the better. And I love card games, but we wanted to do a little bit more.
Absolutely. Really well said. And look, that's the danger and the honor of being able to share this with you guys. Exactly what Ben said. We want to take you on the journey and show you where we've been in order to where we're getting to. So next slide, please. Okay. You can see we're showcasing that weapon that so many of you have really grown attached to. And man, it just, advertising is an amazing thing to do for a living, but we work 70, 80, 90-hour weeks. And when we see people making 3D models of this and doing sketches of it and talking about it and analyzing it, I can't tell you guys how meaningful it is that you're taking the time to figure out that, maybe this is handcrafted, maybe this came from her garage, what is that? Is that a squid? It's incredibly meaningful. So let's get into the next slide, please. So as you see now, we're in this full 3D realized world, and this is when we were making that transition. So you can see some of the old cards here, but this is when we were starting to bring Clementine's personality to life, right? What kid hasn't had that moment, and especially if you live in the burbs, of being out at your bike, and it's sunset, it's 7, 8 o'clock in the summertime, and you're feeling like that's kind of a dangerous time for you, right? We've all had that, whether we grew up in the 80s, 90s, 2000s. And maybe kids don't get that so much anymore just because of the world that we live in. But those moments when the fantasies are becoming realities and she's thinking about these nightmares and these dreams that she's having, we want to place her in and around the space where a game is going to be. And you can see, when you do things like this, when you're 12, 13, 14, 15 years old, you climb up on a don't walk sign, or you climb up on an electricity box in your neighborhood, and you act like you own the place. And there's just a free spirit to this image that we really, really love. Next slide, please. Okay. So I think this is a really great one to have Alex. I don't know, Alex, if you're able to jump in really quick on this slide.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this was like, in the before times when we were first ideating, okay, what is this story? What does it mean? These were some of the very early words that Sean and I and Alan were really kind of collaborating on, and obviously with Norman and Josh too. And so it was this idea of, only the most powerful dream can defeat a nightmare. We really hit on this idea of like we've all got those 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 deep fears and those deep insecurities. There's anyone can identify with. And what's the antidote? It's the hope. It's that shedding that pushing through with that courage. And so we got that dichotomy. So it began as most things do in the unhindered mind of a child, right? That's where it all begins. And so on a night like any other, 15-year-old Clementine awoke from a dream where she saw visions of ethereal beings disrupting the natural balance between light and dark. Creatures without form and from another realm of existence than our own roamed the land, conjuring unimaginable oddities and even twisting good men's hearts. But the strongest part about her dream is that it is now her reality. And that was meant to symbolize the fact that, what starts in our head really does manifest itself in real life. And so, waking up to the world of her nightmares, Clementine found herself all alone in her family's home in the suburbs. However, just as beings from her nightmares came to life, so did powerful creatures of the light. Having become an orphan overnight, Clementine and her new survivor friends are guided by the magical, friendly manifestations of her dreams, determined to turn her world back to the way that it was and find her missing parents. And actually, I think a lot of that, it's very high level, but I think a lot of those themes have actually those are still very, very much the core of everything that we're developing now. In terms of the story and what all of these really amazing, fantastic, creatures and characters that you're seeing. What do they mean and how do they connect in the most broadly thematic and also super intricately interesting ways.
Yeah, thank you, Alex. It's awesome. And then the idea of good and evil, it's timeless. Thousands of years old, and the time that Ben and I have spent working together in the entertainment space and in the movie space and the gaming space, the greatest games and the greatest movies we've worked on always have a human, simple story. And that's what we've tried to do here. And we've seen a lot of you act incredibly passionately and honestly about, mental health and having dreams and having nightmares. It's something we all go through. All of our sleep has been disrupted over the last couple of years. So these are things that we experience. They're not so fantastical that we all haven't had dreams like this, but we're taking it just that one step farther and empowering our character to get into that universe and fight back and fight back through the lens of powers that she's going to discover along the way and that you'll discover along the way with her. So it's really important that there is always a ray of hope in everything that we do. So when we say whimsical macabre and we talk about Danny Elfman and Tim Burton and stories like Edward Scissorhands and some of the games that we've worked on as well that have had huge influences on us, and seeing the way that the developers spend so much time, sometimes years and years, crafting a story, it's been very motivational to us to make sure that when people come into this experience, even when they're looking at something that might feel scary at first, they're stepping into a universe that has a purpose and that has an end goal. And so with that, next slide, please. I'm sorry, there's a little lag. So I'll take Rebels, and then I'm going to hand it to Sean on each one of these. I'm going to talk about the idea behind the design, and I want Sean to really talk about the philosophy of what each one of them mean. The idea of being a rebel is not playing by the rules. And man, we all have so many rules on us, right? Especially the last couple of years. So the way that you build your weapon out of the stuff you find in the garage, you really hated taking those music lessons. So you stuff a squid in it and you make it into something that actually becomes your defense mechanism. And you want to be able to remember your parents, and you find one of your dad's old rags in the garage and you tie it onto your waist and it becomes an icon of your missing parents. And you find your camo jeans to kind of make yourself feel stronger. Each one of the things that we've done when we're designing each one of our characters, we want to relate back to a human emotion of, well, why did they choose that, and what did they do, and why is her hair blowing like that when she's in these action poses, and why is it at rest when she's not? Is there something happening? And I've seen you guys already asking those questions, and there's a reason behind all of it. But this idea of being a rebel, I think, is something that everybody can relate to, and being a rule breaker in our world.
Yeah, to get into real the philosophy behind each of these factions. Each one represents a different spot on a scale of light and dark. We have the rebels. They're not pure light. They're not the dreams, but they are humans empowered by the dreams. They have their faults. But they draw their power from the power of the light. They get fantastical abilities that they themselves bring to life themselves. Each of their abilities is really derived from their desires, the things that they're good at, their hobbies, the things that they really draw power from, that really empowers them. So again, to the next one.
Nightmares. This is rich territory.
Yes.
So one thing that we've always done since the beginning of us all working together is we don't iterate from our own space. And it's really important as a creative team and as creators now of a game. We're not looking at other games and thinking, oh, let's take this from here and this from here. We look at things that we think are important to you guys as an audience. So you can see a lot of fashion influences here in our character designs. So I'm a huge fan of Alexander McQueen, and a lot of us here are, and you know, before his passing, got to go to one of his shows and see the way that he was using textiles, and how, depending on the person that was wearing the clothing, it could take on a very dark or a very light presence. And we look at a lot of clothing designers like that, and a lot of people that are actually doing things that you would never find in a video game, but you've seen that crossover with, you know, huge brands doing partnerships with games, and a lot of them we've been involved with, especially when it comes to, you know, tennis shoes or kicks or trainers, depending on what part of the world that you're in. You know, Nike doing something with, you know, a shooter brand or an RPG brand. You know, it's just like the industry has gotten so big. We see that in the future of Clementine, but right now we're seeing it more for the user, for you guys. So why does this guy look like he's wearing this incredible floral pattern and have this incredibly whimsical gesture, but how does he look so evil? And going back to that original sketch that we shared with you of Mord, when he was a little bit more of like that pencil rail thin character, we felt like he was too stiff. And really what he's about is conjuring. And a lot of nightmares are about conjuring. So good segue to Sean there.
Yeah. So the philosophy behind these nightmares is they are the true darkness of our world. They are the fears, the negative emotions that we represent within the space. As you can see, each of the characters that you see within the nightmares, they're going to have very grotesque features. They're going to have things that really call back to our fears, things that we can all relate to, as like the scary magician, the scary clown. Maybe there's a mask that brings fear, like on Gax with the expressionless white face. We really wanted these to really represent what we can all collectively call scary and fear.
Yeah. And like a lot of scary things, doesn't mean they can't look cool.
Yeah.
And so that we consider him to be one of our cooler characters. I hope you guys agree. Next slide, please. Misfits. Again, I think we all can relate to being a misfit. If you're a gamer, if you're somebody who loves art, if you're somebody who loves to draw and create, even to this day, we still live in a world where, you know, people who are considered to be outside of the mainstream could be, you know, labeled a misfit or a rebel. And, you know, our whole company is made up, I think, of misfits and rebels that are incredibly talented and just were misunderstood in the real world. And that's the great thing about the gaming space, is that it's so inclusive to all kinds of people. And we get to work on a lot of superhero titles. And as those superhero titles have evolved over the years, you'll notice that all those characters have become more vulnerable. They've become more human. They have flaws. I think that's why something like The Boys did so well, is because there was revealing a dark side to what was normally seen as something that was so perfect. And so when we came down to designing the Misfits, and Sean will get into the lore in a second, we really wanted that sort of mischievous, dark, but playful attitude. So you can see the gestures are a little bit more over the top, the lighting's a little bit more over the top. And when you eventually get to see some of the things we're doing with the skins, they're more over the top as well.
So when we get into the Misfits, they kind of represent the darker side of the human race. They are the ones that really dove more into their desires, their desire for power, their desire to more money, more take over the world, such as for like the Butcher. These are the ones that really get empowered by the nightmares themselves. They willingly take on those nightmarish powers. They are the yin and yang to the rebels themselves. If a dream happened to approach a misfit, they very well may have been a rebel, but the nightmare got to them first. So it's really leaning into the darker tendencies of a lot of these characters. And you'll see they're a little bit more punk, they're a little darker in their tone, and they have powers that really derive from those nightmarish spirits and souls.
Better haircuts depending on your POV. Yes. Next slide, please. Dreams. I always turn my head when I say it because they're really whimsical and they're really wonderful. And again, we've seen a lot of the responses that you guys have given as we've released these characters. So you'll notice a different use of light, a different use of shape. The story that we're trying to tell here is a fantastical one, an approachable one, but still very, very powerful, which is going to be a big part of how the dreams interact within the game. So as opposed to, and again, for those of you that are interested, I hope a lot of you guys are, from just an art geek POV, you're going to see softer depth of field, a little bit rounder shapes. You know, has this character come from a tree that had mushrooms growing around it? Is it an actual physical being? What is it? It's all part of seeing it as a dream. So slightly softer colors, slightly softer approach, but still really incredible within our universe.
Yeah, so the dreams are really born from pure light. They are the perfect beings essentially in our world. They are the ones that gave the rebels their powers. They are the ones trying to stop the nightmares. But where they come from is really positive emotions, things that bring positive memories. They're derived from different events and things that really bring positivity to your memory, things that make you happy. So when you see a dream, you'll get, for Twee, for example, he represents nature. Another character might represent a different emotion. But as you get into them, each one will have a very unique look to them. As every single faction, every character within it is very unique in their look.
Next slide, please. And of course, from an art direction POV and a storytelling POV, beasts are definitely a lot of fun. And you can see a little bit more menacing, a little bit more angular, and a little bit more twisted in their proportions. So as we start to reveal our next 20 characters, you're going to see a lot more of this, right? The head angle, the way that the eyes look, the texture of the skin, or in this case, some of that fur. And then totally different lighting scheme, totally different emotion. So we want these things to be incredibly relatable and have touch points into things that you guys see in your everyday life. Even though this is fantastical, it's meant to be relatable, right? So things in terms of like the clothes that they're wearing, the accessories that they have, the places that they are. We don't want to copy too many things that make us feel like, wow, is this medieval? Is this in the future? No, this is in your world, and things that you might see and think of when you were smaller, or even now when you've seen a creature like this in the forest. When you start to think about it and dream about it, it could become a beast in your own mind.
So the beasts, animals aren't really inherently evil or good. They represent that gray area within our world. what just makes them slightly evil or slightly good, whether or not, is who empowers them. We have the nightmare empowered beasts such as Stag that you see here. We have the dream empowered beasts such as Flicker. They align slightly to one direction or the other, but every beast changes in very unique ways. As we get into the next 20 characters, you're going to see that their shapes really vary the most in terms of proportions, the size, how many legs they walk on, what they use as a weapon. They vary greatly compared to pretty much every other faction.
Awesome. Next slide, please. You want to take this one?
Yeah. So as we really wanted to explore like the items within our world, these are first iterations of the props, the accessories that we're really looking to giving to some of the characters. These really more evolved into abilities and powers that are starting to go into the game itself. And as you can see, it's like evolutions and ways that we can really expand on each of the characters. Here you can see we really experimented at one point with tentacles coming out of Mord's hat as one of his early props. Or we gave him the heart-stopping timer. It was actually went into one of his abilities that we were playing with for the game itself. But as you can see here, he has a wide range of different abilities and items that really craft and change his shape for the better.
A lot of what we did in the beginning was based in Art Deco, and I've seen a lot of people asking about that in terms of design inspiration. A lot of timeless artists that draw and create shapes, and we tried to bring that visual language into something that was going to be good to experience, good within a game engine, but also just be loved by you guys. So a lot of that thinking now is continuing to evolve. But for those of you who are into this kind of stuff, you know, Leyendecker was a big inspiration that evolved into kind of a deco style, and now that's melded into our world, which has its own complete unique look. So next slide. So this is a really good. I don't think we should go too deep into this. And Josh, you may want to jump in here as well. But you know, this is kind of a touch point for us of what we're doing and what we're all trying to build towards. We can give you a top line on what this says, but from a growth POV, and then I'll hand it to Sean and Josh. When it's game mechanics, it's one thing. When it's talking about how we want to grow this and grow with you, that goes back to the community portion of this. And the growth is going to go on this journey of us making this thing come to life. So we've shared with you, you know, 3, 4, 5 years, however long it's been, of what's gotten us here. But now we have a look, we have something that you're all responding really well to. You have something that, you know, we really love and you love. So now that growth trajectory is going to be something that we really want to hear your voice on, right? And no thin skins here. Like if we're doing something that you don't like, we want to hear that as well.
So this slide really goes into like the very top line of the game mechanics. Our ideas of thinking about 3v3. This is definitely going to be a multiplayer game. This is going to be a game that you can play with your friends. We want this to be very social, being able to just jump into the battle and play. As you can see, we're really experimenting with some of these more RPG elements where you can integrate heroes and combining abilities and really creating your team of heroes and use them in a very unique way. I think we've said it in the past. There's kind of a little bit of a Marvel versus Capcom-ish mechanic that we have that goes on behind the scenes to really make each hero even more unique. You may pick that hero, but who are his team members? Those team members really make a difference as to how that player or how that character actually battles. So we really want this to be very expansive. And the rest of it really goes over like the rules, like defeat the enemy team, you kind of win, and you win. But it goes a lot deeper than that. With there still can be cards that people can play with. But yeah, Josh, do you have anything you want to add to this one?
I mean, basically, the way we look at this is we want to have a game where you can play 3v3 with beautiful 3D rendered graphics for the characters in our universe, where you can play 3 to 5 minute, extremely exciting, fast paced, quality match. So we want a fast matching system. We want you to be able to play these games, and we want it to be, favorable for competitive gamers. And obviously, we don't decide what people are going to play on Twitch or be able to play competitively. That's for the gamers to decide. But we're designing it so that we can get to those markets because we all love competitive gaming. And there's a huge breadth of, different opportunities for the type of players that want to get into our game. We want to support all of them. Whether you're a casual player that wants to play once every couple weeks, you just want to play a couple little 3 to 5 minute matches, the game should be fun for you. And if you want to spend 6 months bearing and doing tournaments and playing at a very high level, I want to support that for you as well. And that takes a lot of depth and a lot of thought behind the game engine and mechanics itself, which is why we've kept some of those things a little closer to our channel.
Awesome. Let's go to the next slide, please. So this is something that we've been very public about and that we've shared with you guys. It's on the website, and it's something that we're, constantly gut checking ourselves on all the time. But this is very important when it comes to the end goal of making something special and making something quality. So these milestones that we're building towards are obviously backtracked out from something that we want to be able to hit as a target date. And I know that the question is going to be, what is that exact date, which we don't want to give you quite yet. And that's a mistake, again, that we've seen a lot of people make over the years in terms of just trying to put the quality second and put the date first. There is a huge sense of urgency for us to complete this and complete this journey, but we won't do it in a way that's going to hurt the quality or hurt the narrative of what we're building. So I don't know if Ben or Norman, if you guys wanted to comment on this before we leave this slide.
Yeah, I was going to say a couple things. So, I think one of, again, the traps of an NFT first game is you drop an NFT and you go away. We are a game first game that has NFTs with a well built out plan to substantiate our game. So this is incredibly important because we have zero desire to just hit the ground running, do a couple of sales and then go away. And then there's just no more interest left in Clementine's Nightmare. So, part of holding us accountable, to Alan's point, and putting something out there that we believe in, it's about putting calendars out there that, provide some kind of roadmap of what it is that we intend to do with the product. And again, as Alan said, quality bar is of the most important, component to this, but so is transparency and visibility, right? So that, we have that open dialogue with the community as to, here is the plan. Like, there it is. This is what our intentions are to do. And there will be some pivoting and there will be some shifting because, life happens. But, ultimately, this is what we're, setting out to do and setting out to build. So it does lay out, when we're talking about, some of the play to earn components, it does talk about, some of, the beta and when we intend to sort of, launch the game and some of the, phased out approaches to ultimately delivering to you guys, a quality gaming experience, a social experience, something that everybody can enjoy. And as Josh was saying, ultimately it's about bringing something to market that everybody, can have fun with and be proud in. So, this is the current roadmap. Some things can change, obviously. But, as things change, we'll make sure that, you guys are aware of it as well.
Awesome. Josh, anything you want to jump in on there, my friend?
I mean, honestly, milestone driven, not date driven. There's stuff we want to get done in a certain order, and we're going to be really transparent about how we get there. It's one of the great opportunities we get because everybody is able to be transparent and really show everything that we're doing. these types of AMAs, I haven't seen an AMA like this from other teams, because I don't think that they don't have the same way of looking at the community. We've been doing this for 3 years, and we kept quiet for a long time. Now we get to give you that open the door for you and show you inside of what we're doing, and that's going to continue. And so we're going to keep telling you what we're up to. We're going to keep providing these types of updates. And yeah, if a date slips because we can't get to the quality bar we want to get to, you're going to know, because you're going to see along the journey everything that we're doing. And that's what we can promise. And we want to ship something that we're all proud of. And all of us have shipped stuff that has had a global impact at some point in our careers. And now we get to go do it together, which is amazing.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Beautifully said. Go ahead, Norm.
I said absolutely. I mean, Josh was spot on. I mean, Ben was spot on as well. So, we've been saying it since day one. This is a journey, and this is a journey that we want you to embark with us on, and it's going to be a fun one. There's going to be a lot of surprises. There's going to be a lot of things that we're going to be doing that, are expected, and also a lot of things that are unexpected, so, I'm excited. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm very excited. I even broke my chair, so I had to move locations in mid-meeting. But yeah, I mean, we're really excited, and it's been a long journey to get us to this point. And we're 2 days away from our first, unleashing of our characters, of our first set of characters. So this whole journey has been super exciting for me. I've got to meet so many different communities. I've gotten to speak to so many community members over the last couple months, and I've met so many great people, and so many people with the same level of vision that we have, which is very refreshing in this space, because there's a lot of negative, which everybody is very aware of, but there's also a lot of people that are trying to do good by the space, and that's trying to excel the space itself. And I hope people see the difference in those two groups and where we fall. So that's my closing.
It's a great way to wrap. I think that is a good segue for us to say the last thing we want to share with you guys is just the ambition to make something that can be that international voice of positivity, and be a place where people feel like they can come to and share and get behind. Ben and I have been really, really fortunate in our 25 years of working together. Gaming has taken us all around the world, and from China to Tokyo, Stockholm, Switzerland, Germany. I mean, the list goes on and on. Every big developer, we've been to visit them, we've worked with them. And what's so cool is when you don't speak the language and you go into a pub, or you're in the lounge in the airport, and there's a Game Informer cover and it's got a piece of petrol work on it, or somebody across from you is playing a mobile game that we may have worked on. That's really the dream for Clementine, is you start to have conversations with people in airports, and people in pubs, and people in taxi cabs. Gaming is this incredible unifier when it's done in the right way, and when it's done in for the right reasons. And that's really the reason that we're doing this, is we want to make something that people can all get behind. The way that you guys have been getting behind Clementine as a character, and all the other characters that we're making, I mean, I can't tell you how much motivation that is for us. When we read those things and we see those things, it's incredible. So thank you for that, and thank you for all of the fan creations that you guys have been doing. We promise you the same passion and commitment that we're bringing and sharing with you all the way through this process, and can't wait to share even more with you very, very soon. So I think that's it from our side, Norm and Josh.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a great place to wrap it up.
Absolutely. And again, thank you so much to everybody in the community. And I also want to say a big thank you to our community managers. They've been, working tirelessly, through this whole process. And we couldn't be more thankful for a better crew, to manage the community side, and big thank you to our team, Petrol, everything that we're doing right now. It's been a multiple pillar of success. without one, we wouldn't be here. So, collectively, we were all able to make this happen. And although it took many years, but the point is the journey begins here. So our journey begins now, and we haven't even begun to get started yet. So I hope you buckle up your seatbelts because for a ride.
Yep. You guys are just seeing
Awesome.
the first 10 characters now. 20 more coming soon.
So with that, I would like to say thank you for everybody for joining us tonight. Thank you to all my team members for being here tonight as well. Beautiful presentation. We'll wrap this up.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Next time you see us, we'll have real headsets too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.